Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our second ever Yulio Jump Week, and thank you for joining me today for our final webinar of the week, which covers Yulio Jump for SketchUp. My name is Nicole. I'm one of the client success specialists at Yulio, and I'll be hosting today's session. Our main objective for today's webinar is to introduce you to rendering for virtual reality using the Yulio extension for SketchUp. We'll focus on establishing a practical SketchUp to VR workflow and explore how integrating VR and AR into your presentations can truly enhance your client experience. This training will cover a lot of information, so if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to enter them in the question box, and I will answer them during the Q&A period at the end of our session. My contact details are also on the screen now, so if you'd like to follow up on today's webinar with any questions or additional support, please feel free to reach out to me. Finally, if you do have to leave today's session early, I am recording the full webinar and I'll be sending that to all registrants a little bit later so you can watch it back on your free time and share it with your team as well. So here's our agenda for today's session. We'll start off just by going over how to install the extension in SketchUp. I'll cover how to prepare your model in SketchUp and render with Yulio Jump. Once we render our project, I'll show you how you can view and edit your project in Yulio, and we'll finish off with that Q&A period, like I said. So for those of you that are new to Yulio, Yulio Jump is a cloud rendering engine that can render your projects in minutes and can auto-apply navigation and lighting enhancements to turn your model into a VR-ready experience. To begin rendering with Yulio Jump, you need to start off by installing the Yulio for SketchUp extension, which can be downloaded directly from the CAD plugins page on our website. So if you navigate to our website at yulio.com, you can open up this resources tab here and select CAD plugins. And this will take you to this page here where you can download the plugin. The extension is free to download. However, in order to use it, you must have an active Yulio license. With the Yulio extension, you can render the unique files you need for VR, as well as 2D perspective renders, which you're likely already familiar with. So I'll show you what these look like here. So on the on the left, we have our typical 2D image. And on the right of the screen is an equirectangular image that will be used to create our VR experience. So today I'm going to show you how you can render both files with Yulio, depending on what your goal is. So once you've installed the extension, you can go ahead and open SketchUp to start preparing your model for rendering. So here's the model I'm working with today. At this point, it's pretty much ready to be rendered. When it's your turn to prepare your model for rendering, you're going to want to think about a few key things. First, for VR experiences, we recommend creating a fully enclosed building shell with 4 walls, a ceiling, and a floor, which you'll notice that I have in this project. This is because when rendering for VR, your clients are not only seeing what's right in front of them as they would with a 2D render. In VR, your clients will be able to fully explore your space, so having a building shell environment will give them a more realistic and immersive experience. Our rendering engine is also optimized to work best in these types of environments, which is why we recommend it as well. Okay, so this project here is a small condo space. And if I look around, you'll notice that it is fully enclosed. On the topic of preparing your model, let's talk briefly about lighting. So Yulio Jump was designed to simplify the rendering process as much as possible and take all the complexities like lighting off your hands. So when you're preparing your model to render, you don't necessarily have to worry too much about lighting. When you render with Yulio Jump, you'll have 2 lighting models available to light your space. You can still add ceiling lights and other light sources to your space, but when you render your project with Yulio, those lights will appear off. Instead, your light source will be generated from Yulio's smart ambient lighting. I'll get into this a little bit more later on when we open up the plugin to render, but while we're on the topic of preparing your model, that is one thing to keep in mind. The next thing you're going to want to think about is creating your scenes. So we'll start with how we'll set up our scenes for rendering for VR. So when creating a project for VR, you can think of your scenes as different camera views that are set up around your space. Adding more than one scene will help your client explore the full scope of your space by allowing them to move to different areas in the VR project. Before you start setting up your scenes, I recommend you think of the journey that you want your viewer to take as they move throughout the VR project. From here, you can sort of plan out a route. For example, do you picture your client entering at the front and moving clockwise throughout the space, or in a straight line front to back? Think of how they might actually move throughout the space if they were physically present. So if you look to the right of my screen under the default tray, you'll see I've already set up two scenes here. This is a pretty small space, so I really only need about 2 to 3 scenes. I'm just going to go ahead and add one more here. So to do this, I'm going to click on the plus icon. And bear with me here. Sometimes my programs can run a little bit slow when I'm hosting webinars and I'm screen recording. Okay, so here we have my third scene was just added. And from here, you can set your scene using the orbit, pan, and zoom tools, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. So if you give me a moment, I'm just going to do that now. Okay. Generally, I like to keep my camera level at a standing height, as you saw me do here. But you can always get creative and experiment with different camera heights. For example, if you have a couch or a chair in the space, you can do a seated view. So I've placed my camera where I want my third scene to kind of appear. So here's an important tip. When you're placing your camera views for VR, you're going to place your camera where you want it ideally, like I have, and then you're going to move closer. So it might sound a little bit funny, but we recommend doing this because after you render for VR and you go to view that scene, it will always appear more zoomed out than you expect. So in order to capture the view you truly want, you're going to place your camera in your ideal position and then zoom in. So if this is my ideal position here, I'll place the camera and then just zoom in slightly. To save this scene, I'm just going to right click on scene 3 here and update scene. So these are going to be my 3 scenes for this VR project. Again, the number of scenes you will create really just will depend on the size of your space and what your preference is. Now, for 2D renders or 2D images, you can set up your scenes in the same file here if you'd like. When you go to render with the Yulio plugin, you'll be able to select or deselect which scenes you render depending on if you're rendering for VR or 2D. So you don't have to worry about rendering every single scene you've captured. You'll set up your camera for 2D the same way I just did. The only difference is you don't have to zoom in. So just place your camera where you want it, and then the view you see in the thumbnail image here will represent your final 2D render. Another thing I want to note here is by default, when you create new scenes, they will be labeled scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, and so on. If you'd like to customize the name, you can right click on your scene and then just select Rename Scene. If you want to, let's say, distinguish between your VR scenes and your 2D perspectives, this is a good tool to use. You can also add more descriptive identifiers to your scenes, such as kitchen, living room, and so on. All right, now that I have my scenes ready, the next thing I want to show you are some enhancements we can make to our project before rendering. So first is Yulio's enhanced material tags, which is unique to SketchUp. If you're looking to take the photorealism in your projects to the next level, you can apply material tags to specific items in your SketchUp project to add a texturized effect to the item, which will be reflected when you render with Yulio. Enhanced material tags for SketchUp can be used on a list of materials, including leather, ceramic, glass, and wood. If you're interested in learning more about enhanced material tags later on, we do have a knowledge base article on our website, which I'll show you now. So here is this article, and this just offers more details about material tags and applying them. If you scroll down here, we also have a list um, of all of the material enhancements, and you can also see some before and after photos or examples. Okay, I'm just going to return to the project. So to add enhanced material tags in SketchUp, you're going to start by triple clicking on the item you'd like to add the material enhancement to. So today I'm going to be working with this hood fan. So I'm going to triple click on that. Oops, let's go. Next, you're going to open the materials dropdown from the default tray. And then you're going to select this paint dropper tool. And then using this tool, you are going to click on the item you've selected to identify the current material. So you'll notice when I did this, the material label field here has updated to the current selection or my current selection. From here, you're simply going to add one of the material tags from our list in front of the original label. So today I'm going to do #jump brushed metal, which will give the hood fan a subtle brushed metal effect. And then I'm going to just add a space between that, and that's it. So just like that, you're going to make sure to place the hashtag in front of the original label, and then just make sure there's a space in between um, those two, the hashtag and the original label. So you can do this throughout your project on as many materials as you want to enhance. The final thing I want to talk about before we render our project is AR tagging. So, for those of you that don't know, Yulio offers fully automated augmented reality publishing direct from SketchUp. Again, this is an optional enhancement to your VR project that lets you incorporate AR hotspots into your VR experience. For your clients, this means that they can see project elements like furniture in full 360. They can even take it one step further by using a VR headset or a phone or a tablet to see how the element looks and fits in the context of their physical space. I'm just going to go back to my slides now to show you what this can look like for those of you who are unfamiliar with AR. So here's my colleague Dana opening an AR model on her tablet. And once she's done scanning her environment, you'll notice that the AR model will appear as an overlay on her physical environment. And you can do the same type of thing from your phone. And then here's the experience from within an actual VR headset. So they're going to open the model. And once you open it, you can move it around, scale it, lift it, and even walk around it. All right, I'll pause. Oops. Exit that and return to SketchUp. So to export AR assets and have them be created as hotspots in your project, you must first tag the items in your model using our AR tagging convention. So begin by navigating to the tags. Hold on, I'm just going to close the materials. You're going to navigate to the tags tab, and then you're going to select the plus icon to identify a new AR tag. And you can either have one item per tag, or you can group multiple items together under one tag. So, for example, if you wanted to tag the kitchen table with all 4 chairs, you can add all of those items under one tag and it will export as one AR model. So, after selecting the plus icon, a new tag will appear here. And here you're going to type in the name box to rename your tag according to our tagging convention and what object you're tagging. So Yulio's AR tag for SketchUp is hashtag Yulio AR equals, oops, not the plus sign, equals, and then you're going to write your unique label in quotation marks. So the label can be anything you want. We recommend usually reflecting the object you plan on including in the tag just to make it easy to identify. So in this case, I'm going to be tagging a coffee table. So I would just write coffee table in quotations. So as a reminder, it's hashtag YulioAR equals, and then whatever label in quotation marks. Once you've created the tag, you'll need to assign your items or item to it. So I'm just going to press enter, and that tag will be at the bottom of my list here. So to assign my item to the tag, I'm going to select the item in my project here that I would like to add to the tag. I'm going to be tagging my coffee table, so I'm just going to turn around to find that. Actually, let's go to scene 2. Okay, here's the coffee table. So I'm going to select that item. And next I'm going to navigate to the Entity Info tab under the default tray. From here, I'm going to open the tag dropdown and select the AR tag I'd like to add the item to. So I'm going to add this item to my coffee table tag. And then you would repeat these steps if you wanted to add multiple items to one tag. So like I said, if you wanted to add or show off an entire kitchen table set, you would repeat these steps for the table and all 4 chairs. To remove an item from a tag, you would select the item again, open up the tag dropdown, and then just select untagged. Today, I'm going to keep it here. Okay. And that is ready to go. So at this point, we are ready to render with Yulio. So to begin this process, you can navigate to the Yulio extension. Now, the first time you render with Yulio Jump, you'll be prompted here to enter the email address associated with your account just to verify your Yulio license. Once you've gone through those steps, you'll come back to the Yulio extension and proceed with rendering. So here are all the settings you can apply. I'll just go through them one by one. So first we have our company name. Most of the time you only have access to one company or one Yulio account, so you can ignore this. Next we have render with, and this is where you will select to render with Yulio Jump or Yulio Jump Perspective. So Yulio Jump is what you will use to create a VR project, and that project will process and upload directly to your Yulio account. Yulio Jump Perspective is what you will choose when you want to render those 2D images. Lastly, here we have V-Ray. So this is another rendering engine that creates more lifelike imagery, but it is not a Yulio product. If you render with V-Ray through our extension, it just means that your files will be sent to your Yulio account. Today, we're going to render with Yulio Jump. Next, we have lighting models. So here's where you can select the lighting model you would like to render with. Our options for SketchUp are exterior/bright and interior/shaded. I'm going to open up a sample project here to show you how these different lighting models can look depending on your space. And I'll give you a little bit more information about each of those. So here's a sample project. This is actually the model we're working with now in SketchUp. So this first example here is an example of the exterior/bright lighting model. This model typically works best in an environment with many windows or even a skylight. It was created to simulate lighting that you would get from the sun and is more physically correct than the interior lighting model, which I will show you in a minute. This means any shadows and projection in your scene will look more realistic, as it's simulating how sunlight actually appears in a real world environment. Okay, next I'm going to switch over to this example here, which showcases the interior/shaded lighting model. This lighting model typically works best in an environment with few or no windows. This model will produce an artificial light source within the space, and it makes it so that the space will be as evenly lit as possible. As a reminder, neither lighting models require you to add lights to your space. If you do add lights, Yulio will acknowledge them as objects, but they will appear off. Okay, now I'm going to return to SketchUp. For this project, I actually chose to render with the exterior/bright model because even though my model doesn't have a lot of windows, I actually liked how this model looked more for this specific project. So you're always welcome to experiment with both lighting models because they can kind of vary depending on your unique project. All right, our next setting here is where you'll select the folder within your Yulio account that you would like the VR project to upload to. Next, you'll select your scenes. So these are the scenes you would like to render that you set up in SketchUp. So here are the 3 scenes that I established. As a reminder, if you set up scenes for both VR and 2D images, here is where you can select or deselect those depending on if you're rendering for VR or 2D. Now we have some project enhancement settings. The first one here is add navigation hotspots. So by selecting this enhancement, Yulio will auto-generate navigational hotspots for your project so your viewer can move scene to scene when viewing your VR project. Navigational hotspots are our form of point-to-point navigation, and that's what helps create that walkthrough experience. So I'm going to add those in today. You can always add them in manually later on from within your Yulio account if you choose to do that later. Next, we have the add floor plan enhancement. So by selecting this, Yulio will capture your floor plan during the rendering process and export it as an asset in your VR project. If you set up your VR project to include multiple scenes, your viewer will be able to use the floor plan to navigate to new scenes within the project. And I'll show you that a little bit later as well. Okay, finally we have add AR models. So you'll want to select this, of course, if there are any items in your design that you've tagged as AR. When you select this, Yulio will generate and insert those AR models into your VR project as an interactive hotspot. And that's it. So once you've selected all your preferences, you'll simply click on the Create Project button. The time to process and render will depend on the size and complexity of your project. To give you an idea, a smaller project like this one here will process for about 20 seconds, and that should only take about 5 to 10 minutes to render and upload to Yulio. As a reminder, Yulio Jump will render all of your projects in the cloud, meaning after your project processes for that 20 to 30 seconds, you'll be able to continue using SketchUp and your computer as normal while the files actually render. Once your VR project has rendered and uploaded to your Yulio account, you'll receive an email notification to let you know. And if you rendered with Yulio Jump Perspective for those 2D images, you'll receive those files to your email where you can download them. Okay, I've pre-rendered this project so we don't have to wait for it to render. So I'm going to exit out of this. And I'm going to return to my Yulio account to open it up. So here is how your project will appear once it's rendered and uploaded to your Yulio account. If you click into the project, you'll land here on what we call our project edit page. This is where you will see all your project assets that you rendered with Yulio Jump. So this includes your scenes. Over here we have our AR models that we rendered, as well as our floor plan. You can also add additional enhancement assets here, including audio, images, and video. If you're not adding any additional assets to your project, you can simply click this View in 360 button and go ahead and view your project from your computer. So we'll start off by viewing our project in browser mode, which is what we're doing now. Browser mode just means that you're viewing the project from an internet browser, whether that's on your computer, a phone, or a tablet. While viewing in browser mode on a computer, you can click and drag your mouse to look around the scene. If you're using a touchscreen device, you can use your finger to hold and drag along the screen to view the project. As we look around, you'll notice our navigation hotspots and AR models in the scene. So if your project has navigation hotspots, you can click on them to navigate to a new scene and move throughout the space. So I'll go ahead and click on scene 2 here. And as you can see, I'm in a new scene that just gives me a different perspective of the space. I also want to point out from this perspective here our hood fan that we added our enhanced material tag to. So as you can see, it just added a subtle brushed metal effect, and it just gives it a more realistic texture than if it were just a flat gray color. All right, from here, I just want to talk about our AR hotspots. So looking down here at our coffee table, you can view your AR hotspots on a phone, a tablet, or a computer. However, the best experience for AR is on a VR headset that has mixed reality capabilities. So, if you wanted to view AR on a headset, you just want to make sure that that headset has a pass through camera in order to see the model in your physical environment. So to view an AR hotspot from the browser mode experience from a computer, you'll just click on the hotspot. And if you're viewing it on a computer, really the only capabilities you have here are to rotate the model in full 360, and you can zoom in on it as well. To get the full AR experience from your computer, you can select this AR button here at the bottom right side of your screen. And this will open up a QR code that you can scan with your smartphone or tablet. When the link opens on your phone or tablet, the AR object will appear as a digital overlay, as you saw in the video I showed you earlier. So from there, you can place the object, turn it, walk around it, and so on. If you open the object, or if you opened the VR project originally from a compatible phone or tablet or VR headset, you'll be able to view the AR model directly on from that device without having to scan any QR codes. So this is unique to if you're viewing that VR project from a computer. The last thing I want to quickly talk about is VR headsets and viewing your Yulio projects from a VR headset. So the VR experience is similar in that the navigation of your Yulio projects is very intuitive. That being said, the VR headset really just offers a much more immersive viewing experience. In terms of compatibility, Yulio is compatible with the MetaQuest series of headsets. So these are their current headsets that they are producing. Um, the MetaQuest series offer a really good viewing experience and at a range of costs depending on your budget. They also all three of the ones shown here have that pass-through camera for mixed reality viewing. So in order to view those AR objects. To view in VR, you do have to connect a headset to your Ulio account, which requires some initial setup. Due to time, I'm not going to go into all of that today. However, if you are interested in learning more about connecting a VR headset to your account, you can check out this knowledge base article here. To access our knowledge base from our website, you can click on the resources tab and then knowledge base. We also offer some video tutorials on our YouTube channel for connecting a headset. So you can find our YouTube channel at Yulio VR. Of course, you can always reach out to me for support with setting up your headset and viewing in VR. I'm always happy to walk you through that process. All right, I'm going to return to my slides, and that will wrap up the webinar for today. So thank you all for joining me. I hope that you were able to learn more about Yulio Jump and how seamlessly it can fit into your existing workflows. If you have any questions, you can submit them in the chat box, and I will stick around for the next couple of minutes to answer those. As a reminder, if you want to book an additional training session with me on anything we did or didn't cover today, my email is up on the screen, so please feel free to reach out and I will gladly work with you to set up a time for us to meet. Of course, you can also email me anytime if you have any questions that pop up later. So I will stick around for the next couple of minutes to answer any questions. But other than that, have a great rest of your afternoon. And thank you again for joining me.